the community commons. I wanted to point out the, hold on just 1 minute, let me go and show you the Community Commons Way of the Nation page. So on the Commons itself is communitycommons.org, but we have a site here called communitycommons.org/WOTN, which is a resource on the Commons that really consolidates the variety of different resources out there around the Way of the Nation, and really helps you to be able to take action in your community with these resources. So before we jump into the PowerPoint, I just want to give you a short tour of this page because I'll be referring to it as I go through the PowerPoint itself. On the left-hand side of the page, we have some trailers and some videos here of some actual screening events that have happened. In the middle here, we have some resources to take action in your community that I'll be referring back to, as well as getting the kit itself. And then some resources to learn more and utilize some of the great data in the Commons. Finally, at the bottom, we have some places where you can connect and discuss, join groups, and identify good reports and resources. And then on the right-hand side of the page, we have some fresh feeds from Twitter and news around the actual Way to the Nation events that are going on and the dialogue that's happening daily around this great film. Well, let me go back to the presentation here for a minute and talk a little bit about how you can get started in engaging your community around the Way of the Nation. And Jamie's going to walk you through a couple of these slides.
Okay, so the first thing that we wanted to show you, because hopefully you're still in the early planning stages, and this is if you're in the early planning stages of putting together your Way to the Nation screening event. There are two documents that live on separate sites that are really great documents to use as a foundation for getting the conversation started, starting to think about the process that you'll use to plan your event. The first one is called One to Host an Event That Really Activates. And this was put together by Kaiser Permanente, and it lives on the Commons under the Community Activation Kit. And so you're able to see somewhat of a checklist to go through to see some of the planning steps. And so there's also the Organizing a Screening Checklist that you can find on the HBO site. And there is some overlap between these two documents, but they both provide a really good foundation for planning, and they also provide a kind of a roadmap for opportunities for you to be able to use data and maps on the Commons to augment your process. Basically, what we did is we used these two documents to look for those opportunities to use maps and data throughout the entire process, not just in the beginning steps and not just in the middle steps, but pretty much all the way through the process of hosting a screening to the post-screening. So once you've had a chance to get acquainted with those documents, the next slide, here we go. Oh, can you click over for me? Our next slide shows some sample agendas, which can also be found on the Community Commons site under the Community Activation Kit link on the Way to the Nation page. There's also a good way to get acquainted with starting your process will be to watch the films. Since there are 4 films, you'll have to determine which one will be the best film to show in your community and which one's going to resonate best with your participants. From there, we really encourage you to come back to the Way to the Nation page on the Commons. And as Erin showed you, we have some screenings from different communities. This is Denver and this is El Paso County for you to watch. And so these are basically post-screening discussions that will give you an insight into what other people have done post-screening wise to start a discussion with their participants. And that'll give you a good idea of maybe how you would start to plan for your post-screening discussion as well. And then finally, we have down here, join the Way to the Nation group on the Commons. This has become a pretty active group over the past couple of weeks. And so we're encouraging people to get to know the group, get involved in the group. In order to be able to ask questions, we have some people on there who have already hosted screenings. We have some people on there who are asking questions about getting ready to host a screening. And so this is a really great place for you to be able to connect to those people who have already hosted screenings, ask some questions, find out some best practices. Here we have somebody from Toledo asking about a call to action after a community screening. So there's really a wide variety of questions and answers that you could get here in this group. So this would be also a good place to start. So all of these things will help you get started in the process. And Erin is now going to show you some places where you can use maps and data to augment your pre, post, and during the screening event.
Yeah, there's a lot of different information and data included in the different tools in the Commons. And so I'm going to go through those on the site live. But before I do, I wanted to look at this slide to kind of set up what I'm going to do. One thing that you can utilize the Commons with regard to your screening is to find partners and allies via the map of the movement. And we're going to take a look at the map of the movement, and I'll show you how you can find place-based initiatives going on by different locations, as well as focus areas and strategies. You can utilize the HBO site to find screenings that are scheduled near you. And you can perhaps even utilize some of the GIS data and interactive mapping layers to create and augment invitations to really spark the dialogue before people even arrive at the screening, and really show, you know, this is really a problem in our area, or there's something here that needs discussion, and create kind of that visual that is compelling and invites people to come to the screening and learn more. So let me just go to the site and we'll really talk about each of those pieces that I described. First, under Connect, we have the map of the movement. So the map of the movement identifies the locations of place-based initiatives, multi-sector place-based initiatives that are working on this healthy and sustainable living communities across the country. We have lots of points here. You see that they're kind of populating as the map loads. And these can be searched. So you don't need to click on each individual one in your area. You can really hone down and filter based on particular strategies that you're interested in. There's different cohorts you can identify. So, for example, if you wanted to look at all of the Let's Move sites across the country, you can check the box there and identify those as you zoom into an area. But more likely, I think you might be interested in looking at who's working on a specific focus area and strategy. So let's say that you are working in Ohio. You are hosting a screening there, and you really want to make sure that you have folks around the table that are working in the child care and after school environment, and make sure that that voice is represented. Perhaps more specifically, you want to know who's working on nutrition policies in after school environment. And then you want to make sure that the faith-based community, you have those who are interested in working on those topics. So you can click that and identify these actual points. You can click on the points themselves to access the profile and identify contact information. Clicking here, you can see Building a Healthy Marion. We have a profile here with some information, as well as some contact and email address, etc. So the map of movement can be a great place to kind of get the lay of the land in your area. If you identify a specific city or geographic area that you're working within, you can see what's going on in that area. Some of these have complete profiles, others are smaller profiles with less information, but it can really start to paint that picture of activities and build a coalition of those who already are interested. Going into the mapping area around potential data visualizations that might make compelling additions to your invitations or to show at your screening, you can actually start here under Visualize and look at some starter maps. Now, the Commons has thousands of different data layers, and you can really build your own map with the geography, with any type of data that you're interested in. But we've created some starter maps around specific topics to get you started. So, for example, this first one here is looking at access to healthy foods. So if I click to open this map, it's actually going to bring in a data layer called the Modified Retail Food Environment Index, which is a very long name that I trip up on often, but it really is just showing the relative access to healthy food in the community. And it's at the sub-county level. It's looking at actual tracts. And this can be really helpful in terms of a dialogue and within your screening to start looking within your community. So perhaps not everyone in your community really does have a situation where they struggle accessing healthy foods. But being able to show a map like this and showing that there are real areas or pockets in the community that have no healthy retail food outlets, then that can really spark that dialogue, and the community can start to have that conversation and talk about what possible solutions, opportunities, challenges exist at the sub-county level. So this data, this map here is kind of pre-packaged. It has the modified retail food environment data that I just mentioned, or relative access to healthy food, where a blue area indicates, or darker blue area indicates more healthy food choices, and a darker red area indicates fewer or no healthy food choices. Those blue dots here are the SNAP authorized retailer locations, and the yellow circles indicate farmers market locations. So we have a short description there, but this could really, the conversation could, this could just be the conversation starter. Now, of course, this is in a specific location here, but you can create this map anywhere you'd like. So we were just looking at Marion, Ohio. We can actually go to that location, and it will recenter the map on that location. So you can make this map for your area. This data is all national, so it will be available anywhere. Another nice thing that you can utilize to support your preparations for a screening is this saving the map. So once you've created a map that you like and you feel like it tells a compelling story, you can actually save that map as an image. So by saving this, I can save the map itself as an image. I can drop it into my Word document that perhaps I'm using to create my brochure or flyer. I could paste it into an email distribution, anything like that. So this map itself is free for you to use and pull out the image you need to support your screening. Let's see, going back to the starter maps, let me just take a moment and show you some of the different starter maps you might use. The one that I showed in the beginning was really looking at local distribution of healthy food, but there's also a lot of other topics here around healthcare, workers walking and biking to work, etc. But I wanted to show here at the bottom a couple of interesting ones that, while they're not sub-county or really show local variability, they might be interesting to spark a dialogue around, does my area have a problem with diabetes relative to the rest of the nation, and what kind of dialogue and discussion might come up as you're looking at a map like this one, which shows the rate of diabetes at the county level across the nation. And you can see some real differences in the distribution there. And something like this can often really spark a dialogue, as well as supplement, build a case, or facilitate or help guide a discussion around this topic. Okay, we're going to go back to the PowerPoint for a few minutes, and I'm going to talk some more here. Let's see. Okay, a couple of other tools that are available. There is a great guide on the HBO site around promoting your event that talks about, provides some templates and draft invitations, agendas, kind of a checklist to getting started there. There are also, is there anything else here that I missed that you wanted to share? Okay. There's also opportunities, as I mentioned before when I was looking at the maps, to highlight local data when you create those flyers, posters, and op-eds. There's a link there that will take you to writing a op-ed to kind of generate some discussion locally. And that op-ed might be really enhanced with some mapping materials, one of those map images that I showed you. Of course, also via websites and social media platforms, those maps could be embedded there to really boost that conversation. So after the screening, it's a great opportunity to have some good discussion. And if you're not familiar with the films, there's 4 films and they deal with some different topics, and out of each of those films some different pieces come out that the Commons has a variety of different resources to support. In the first film, Consequences, some topics are discussed around, of course, obesity and diabetes, as well as the change in obesity rates. Lots of conversation there in those films about how the rates of obesity have gone up over time, as well as diabetes. So I mentioned the data around obesity. You saw that, or the diabetes rates. We'll also go back in the map room in a moment, and I'll show you some other data that we have around obesity that might support that. Film 2 is around choices, so some things that are in the Commons around that would be the food environment data, where the retailers are located and where areas of higher or fewer retail choices are available. Access to healthy food by race, affordable foods, food insecurity. These are all data sets that are available within the Commons. Film 3 deals with children in crisis, so looking at childhood obesity rates, access to recreation, free and reduced price lunch eligibility as a data set in the Commons, being able to look at all schools in the nation and select those with higher rates of free and reduced price lunch. And looking at that map of the movement to identify who's working on school wellness programs, walking school bus, etc. Film 4 deals with challenges, so access to healthcare, worksite wellness, commuting and healthy living, and those commuting patterns that you saw in the starter map, so looking at % of workers walking or biking to work. So let's take a moment to go to the Commons and see what some of those resources are that would support that. Under Engage, we have the features section of the Commons, and if you haven't seen this, this is a great place where weekly a different item or a different topic is featured. So around that 4th film, looking at some of the challenges that we face in tackling the obesity crisis is, of course, healthy drinks and avoiding soda. So here we have a feature around the National Soda Summit and some information here with a video, as well as just sort of a very short summary of soda consumption and that problem in our nation here, as well as a little factoid. Also on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see a link to a map around regional consumption of soft drinks per capita. The resource here. There's also a take action item. So kick the can, giving the boot to sugary drinks is a great website there. So we try to provide a lot of different resources, as well as a webinar here given by NPlan. But if you wanted to know what else is available on the Commons around soda, you can just search here on the features section and be able to find not only the features that deal with this topic, but members who are part of the Commons that are interested in this topic. Scrolling down here, we have groups that are dealing with group conversations that are dealing with that, as well as news and features. We've had a couple news and features that deal with the soda issue, as well as an activity stream there. So the Commons can really, as you're having discussions around each of the films, breaking down the topics that you'd like to discuss in your post-screening discussion, and searching the Commons for what's available there. Of course, we also have a news section, which can also be searched. So clicking here under the news, you can see that if the topic one day after your screening was around school lunch, we just happen to have a news feature here dealing with that very topic, and being able to refer folks to that and using this to really spark that discussion can be pretty effective. One of the other topics I think that was there was around worksite wellness. So again, being able to search and seeing what resources are available on the Commons around worksite wellness, which would include members who have indicated an interest in that, groups. We have a Commons group that's specific to worksite wellness, and of course news and features that deal with that topic. Now, I also mentioned that there's more data available than what you see in the starter map. I mentioned that you can build your own map to really address all of those topics that may come up in your post-screening discussion. So here on the upper area of the Make a Map, we have local initiatives. So these are the same points that you saw on that map of the movement. So for example, we looked at child care and after school, and we looked at those dealing with nutrition policies. We can check that and turn that on and be able to see that in the interactive mapping environment. Now, what's different about this mapping environment from the one you saw in the map of the movement is we can also include lots of other indicators. We can overlay items. So if we wanted to look at nutrition policies with perhaps food insecurity or food security, we could do that here. We could look at the food insecurity rate of children under 18, or even break that down further, looking at the percent of food insecure children who are not eligible for public assistance. So being able to drill down and really see where the discussion is going, perhaps even providing some of this data in advance of your screening to your moderators and panelists, and seeing what comes out there. They may want to spend a little time on the Commons, creating some maps of your area, pulling out some data, and seeing if some interesting patterns arise that they'd really like to present to the audience, and seeing if that really can spark the conversation and some interesting dialogue. These visuals can often be very compelling. I was recently in a community meeting where they were presenting some local food assessment, and when the maps were put up, you could see everybody just sort of leaning in, and just their minds just really started going when they saw those visuals. It really helped to spark the conversation. It didn't have all the answers, certainly, but it can be a great dialogue enhancer. So some of the other data that's available that might support all those different topics would be, again, around health, the obesity and diabetes data, lots of different ways to look at this over time, different years of diabetes, as well as percent change overall from 2006, 2009. So you can say, you know, what's going on in our community? Is the obesity rate going up? Perhaps we don't have a higher, you know, a very strikingly high obesity rate as compared to some other parts of the nation, but, you know, we're concerned that it's going up, and this is a problem for our community. So there may be different ways to look at the data to enhance that conversation. Is there anything, Jamie, that you'd like to add to some of these pieces that I've missed?
I think that you're doing a great job of covering some of the data, and I would like to reiterate that I think this is a really good way if you're looking at involving a panel of you know, local experts or even national experts in your Way of the Nation screening. This would be a great way for them to get some information locally, regionally, on some of the indicators that might be affecting the rates of obesity or diabetes in your area. And as Erin said, it's a great way for people to start to visualize any problems and or successes maybe that are in the community compared to others. And it's a great way also to make a map of your area and trying to find an area somewhere else in the nation that might be similar in population or demographics, and really compare some of those indicators and start looking at maybe what another community is doing differently or what you're doing differently to see those results. So I think that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, I just added, while Jamie was talking, just one other layer. So looking at food desert census tracts. So again, that can be another conversation starter around, do we have pockets in our community that the USDA has identified as a food desert? And how do we feel about that? Does that seem right to us? And, you know, what might we be able to do to increase access to food in that community might help kind of spark that conversation. Let me go back to the PowerPoint real quick. So again, looking at these different buckets around what each of the films deals with, around consequences, choices, children in crisis, and challenges, just keep in mind that there are lots of different resources on the Commons, whether that be humans to, you know, connect with members who have expressed an interest in these different topics, whether that be data and maps, whether that be news, features, and groups that you can join. There's a lot of different resources throughout the Commons that can complement the different themes that are presented in each of the 4 films. After your discussion, there's lots of different resources on both the HBO site as well as the Commons Way to the Nation page that can help with that discussion. So the HBO site provides film discussion guides. There are also a link here to sample moderator panel questions, so you don't have to create this panel by yourself. There's lots of resources both on the Way to the Nation Commons page as well as the HBO Way to the Nation page that really can help you start with something and then tailor it to your community. You don't have to start from scratch. Those post-screening discussions that Jamie pointed out on the Way to the Nation page, the videos from Colorado, and
El Paso County.
El Paso, thank you. That will help you kind of see what's worked and what was successful in those communities. And we hope to add more as more screenings happen across the nation. So just to kind of wrap up here, I'd like to talk about some of the actual things that you can do right away today to get going after your screening and then after this webinar today. After you've had a screening, we'd love to hear about your ideas, what worked, what didn't work, just the story itself, perhaps video and pictures on that Way to the Nations group on the comments. Make sure that you find Community Commons, Way to the Nation, and Kaiser Permanente on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. There's the Community Commons Twitter feed, as well as Way to the Nation and KP Thrive, all having great information, and they'll be tracking some of the successful screenings that are happening. Use the Way to the Nation hashtag so others can find you and see what you're doing around this topic. There's a handout, 10 things that you can do, that is hyperlinked here, that talks about more things you can do after an action kit and actually activating your community around the film. And continue to check out the communitycommons.org Way to the Nation site for news, updates, feature stories, and more. And we'll just land back at that page and open it up for discussions. If anyone has any questions, they can be specific to the Commons, some of the tools perhaps that I didn't cover, or perhaps anything else that you have around anything that was presented today. We'd be happy to answer those. But again, it's communitycommons.org/Way to the Nation for these resources here, and this page will be updated frequently as we learn more.
And just so you all know, like Erin said, the PowerPoint will be available on this page as soon as we're done here. I'll go ahead and post it up there. And then also the maps and data that correspond to the themes of the movies will also be posted later today too. So if you want to find that resource and get back to those specific starter maps that correspond to each of the films, you'll be able to do that as well.
There is a question panel on the right-hand side of your screen, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to put those in there. We'll be happy to answer them. And if you don't have any questions, you're, of course, free to go. And just follow up over email if you have questions that come to you later. Thank you all for your time today.